Hello and God bless you. This is Ellen Mongan, host of Go Tell the World, my co-host, Deacon Patrick Mongan, MD. Welcome to the show. And Patrick, our guest today. And I'm so excited. We haven't had him on the show for a long time because I guess we just love all of the people we have on this guest. We want to have them all come back again. I always think people are going to invite themselves, but to remember, I'm so thankful to have Patrick
Oh, Hearn.
on the show again. And good to be here with you.
Oh, it's good to be with the fellow Patrick, and I'm sure the fellow Irishman.
I wish.
You can't keep saying
Turns
it.
out I don't have a lot of Irish
But
blood,
maybe they messed up. Maybe they messed up.
but it is an Irish name. Mongan is an Irish name.
He
Yeah.
did it
So,
on that.
Patrick, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm just I'm a father I'm blessed with two children on earth, and been married for almost 14 years.
Oh,
Actually, I'm losing track of the time there. It's either, let me see, I got it's isn't it funny you like how many years is actually, I think it'll be 12 this year. I'm I should know that.
well, then this generation, right? It's a lot. We're at 52,
Yeah.
right?
Almost 52.
Yes, that's awesome.
That's wonder. Actually, it's going to be 12 this summer. But I was thinking it feels like it's been 14 years. But,
We won't ask.
congrats, and that's that. And I'm blessed. I work for this Catholic nonprofit called Stewardship, a Mission of Faith, and so I'm a director of ministry expansion. And one of the things, I work with the Fathers of St. Joseph, Integrity Restored. We train priests on how to deal with pornography, and also lay people as well. And then Keith Nestor, he has a great YouTube station, and so just really grateful to work for them. And I help with their social media accounts. So if you're on Instagram and you look up like Fathers of St. Joseph, or and then same for Integrity Restored. And then I also I love to write books. It's a gift that the Lord has given me, and so it's kind of. But my most important thing is to be, my friend Devin Shad, who works for the Fathers of St. Joseph. He always says, our vocation, our occupation is at the service of our vocation. So just always trying to serve. Just realizing that, when the work finishes, at the end of the day, that's when I'm with my family. That's what matters most.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think sometimes people misunderstand in terms of the whole idea of vocation is in our very nature is Pope St. John Paul II would say is our very nature is to be married. That's the vocation. That is the primary vocation of everyone, including priests. The difference is who are you married to? Who is your spouse is the difference. But that's our very nature, male and female, he made them. That's why Jesus refers to the church, his body of Christ, as the bride, because marriage is essential
And
to our
so
nature.
in marriage, if you do it right and you parent your children, you can read Patrick's book, Parents of Saints. And I think it's awesome there was a book when I was young, I'm older by you by 100 years, and it was called The Mothers of the Saints. And all the people that we were in Christian community had that book, and they were reading about how could you parent a child to become a saint. That's our goal as parents to get them to heaven, right?
Yeah, I think
so far our kids are still here.
and one of the things I think is a weakness often of all of us in terms of really looking at ourselves and doing a self-examination as parents in terms of, okay, what examples do we have?
Mhm.
And this is great, this book, because everybody talks about the saints, but where did those saints come from? Now, the truth is we know some of the greatest saints came from really bad backgrounds
That's true.
because God can work miracles in people's lives and change people. But to see somebody who was raised in such, by such holy people,
Oh,
and
so
the fruit of that holiness is really great to be able to see that, and for us to kind of, as parents, to look at how are we doing in comparison, and even in real life, how often, if we belonged in the past to a community of Christians, and
Mhm.
and to do really a self-examination, because even there we had examples of people that we lived with
Mhm.
who seemed to be producing really good Catholics.
So what do you all do from this book, Patrick? That you all do with your two
Yeah,
children?
how do you compare?
How do you compare?
Yeah, I know. It's funny. Well, I'm going to grab. Let me. Actually, Tan did that book came out with Tan, and we did a second release and actually changed the cover. So this
Okay.
is a newer. I mean, it's the same. It just same book. I just made
Yes.
a few updates on it, but I put on the front cover because I did another book with Tan called Courtship of the Saints. But I love this image of, well, this is Blessed Jane of Aza. This is Saint Dominic Guzman's mother. And so just this
Wow.
image, taking her children to before the Blessed Sacrament. I think that's, one of the things that, the parents, the saints did is, they brought their children. They went and made visits. Saint Teresa's dad, he would often take her, on Sundays, they would go and stop by and pray at the church. And I think it's not that hard for us. We take our children to all these sporting events, and it's like, why can't we go make a visit to the Blessed Sacrament? If it's, even if it's, I always say sometimes it's like you can't make a holy hour, make a holy minute. Just go in there
I like
and just,
that.
and
Sure.
Because there's grace in that room. Our little grandbaby, she's only 6, I think. We have 17 grandbabies. And she wanted to have a special, Mom and Me Day. Somebody call it Ferris Bueller's Day Off because it's not a school day, but it's often. So in case we don't tell which one this is. And she wanted to go to the Adoration Chapel. We got so excited. She's raising a saint, but then she didn't last but 5
But about a
minutes.
minute.
But still, it was still grace, right? It was still grace, and we just were so blessed. So yes, bring them to. And when I was a kid, we had so many different traditions that we did. Like if it was an ambulance, we'd pray to the angel of God, like guardian dear, and we'd say prayers before bed. There was so much we did that I don't think it lost it because people didn't desire the Lord. They lost it probably because your generation is different than ours, and they didn't know. No one taught them. So did you teach them things? Are you teaching more stuff or the children than that? I love that one.
Yeah, we do. Like, obviously we're blessed to homeschool our children. So at nighttime, I'm going through,
Nice.
I've been kind of taking over the religion aspect. And so, reading with my son before we go to bed. And, we like to get a lot of saints books too. And so I think it's just important that the faith is just something that they're breathing in. It's easy for, we I don't even say that, compartmentalize, we go to Sunday mass and that's it. That can't be it. It's got to be
Right.
every single day where it's, you're praying at meals, and even during Lent, when I spent before with the show, I was talking that I spent a few years in a Benedictine monastery, and I loved in the monastery they did table reading. So this year for Lent, I can't find the little book, but it's a book that Marian Press puts out, and it's just little daily reflections, for Lent. It's really simple. So I just started that just to read that when we're
Mhm.
eating. I don't do it the whole, it takes like a minute to read, but I think it's important again, like maybe even on that Sunday before we go to mass, it's like I know in the monastery that night before at vigils we would read the gospel reading. I think that's important too for our family. Like, you to introduce scripture, even just be a simple reading. And I think that's what the parents of the saints, and I'm far from being a parent of the saint, but that's my ultimate goal is to raise my children to be saints, and not so they're just, and we were going to talk about too, the book Humility of the Saints that I just
I'll
came
hear
out with
that.
Sophia, and I think there's a notion on that is even this we have to be careful is like a lot of the saints they wanted to be saints, but if our whole notion to be a saint is just so we can be praised to be a saint, that's kind of wrong, right? I think really,
A little bit.
Then you're
yeah,
not a
but
saint.
I know. Because it's like, oh, I want to, so people can someday I can be remembered and honored. No, I mean, really, I think in heaven, the greatest saints, maybe the ones, even Mother Angelica agrees to this, are the ones that aren't even canonized. Just it could be some old washerwoman or some garbage man,
Absolutely.
that love God. And, often the people that are canonized, it's like majority of them come from religious orders and they have, it takes a lot of money and it takes time to write these letters and Mary, like for instance, when you guys pass away, it's like your children, it's like they don't have time to go document everything about your life. And, it's like, and so that's why, in a sense, but in a religious order, like you have someone that's committed to that full time to get them promoted. Anyways, just long stories like, yes, we should want to be a saint, but like a saint that's not maybe more a hidden saint
Mhm.
that seeks not to be glorified, but to glorify God.
That's good. Jim, let's take a guy's name. I forget his name. He's a movie star. He played the part of Jesus. And
Hazel.
Jim Caviezel wrote something just like that. I might see things late, so I happened to see it. It said that don't be wanting to know that everyone in the world knows your name because God knows your name. And maybe you don't have a title or, the movie star, but it was really good to me because, sometimes we think that we're doing it for Jesus alone and we don't really care if anybody knows we do. I don't care because God asked me to do things that he wouldn't ask someone else. And he asked each person to do a different mission, a different, like you to write books, me to write books and speak out,
Mhm.
and you speak out as well, Pat to preach. And he asked us, and we others don't know what time we put into it, what our heart is like, I don't want to do this, or yes, I'm so excited to serve the Lord. And only God knows our heart, right?
Yeah. So what motivated you? Because I would say you're a pretty prolific writer. I mean, you've written quite a few books. What motivated you to do that?
Yeah. Well, the really two things. One is when my wife and I were going through our miscarriages, there wasn't any resources on that. So let me grab, I think I have that book here too, the Nursery of Heaven. And so
That's the other one I
yeah,
have.
yeah, I
Right?
co and
That is so great.
we did a newer edition, and Sophia Press just published it, and we have more stories in there now. But again, it was just looking for material to help us. And so I was like, God, like, where's these books at? And God's like, why don't you write it? It's almost like, the story of, I think it's St. Francis, Mother Cabrini, right? She's like, who's going to go help the people and, over in the missions? And he's like, well, why don't you do it? And
Right.
so,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
so I think there was that desire. And, I actually struggled with writing most of my life. I always say this, like I couldn't even barely write a high school paper, a college paper, and like I had the creativity. I think God gave me that creativity that I knew, and then I just, all of a sudden, like, and then when we're getting married too, it's like I wanted to learn how to raise a saint, and I looked through different books, and everything's like this parenting experts, but not really a book that studied how the saints were formed. And so again, that book came to me. It's like God's like, okay, Patrick, you're gonna write. I'm gonna have you write it since it's not out there.
Yes, Lord will. That's good. That's good. You're afraid to almost think. You're like, okay, I think it's
And
good now.
another
I'll be
spinoff
out.
is your book about men in terms of how often when we talk about miscarriages, and because we lost a baby at
Full
two
term.
and a half hours after birth
Um,
from trisomy 18. And so
Mm,
often everybody focuses on mom and they don't focus on the grief of the fathers. And
that's
you've
yeah.
written
true.
a book on that.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, the grief of the same thing. It was like and
Oh, I didn't.
I'm sorry for your loss. And it hit me home. One of the gentlemen here, it's a pretty powerful story. His son was killed in Kuwait, which hits home now with the
Oh,
whole war going on. But his son, his name was Captain Stephen Phyllis, and he went to my high school. I grew up in Illinois. I'm originally my parents are from Ohio, but we lived in Illinois. And so this gentleman was 30 years old, and he was engaged, and one of his wingmen was shot down. And
oh,
in order to kind of save him, so he could kind of get, what do you call that? Eject from from
oh,
the
yeah.
airplane and be safe. He went and for like 3 minutes, he flew around in the air and to distract them, and he offered his life. And so I interview his father in here to tell that story. And it really,
Oh,
again, just whenever I hear military, when I see those parents, it's like it just chokes me up. And so again, this book there's some of those stories are in there to help Catholic men to realize, like, again, you're not alone. And so that's why I feel like God. And one other thing, maybe Father Jim Blount. He's
I do. I mean, we know of him. We don't know him
yeah.
personally.
I was just listening to an incredible talk he gave, and this is the same with all of us. People don't reflect upon this. It's like the day of your birth and your name is so important. And like you're Deacon Patrick, and I was given the name Patrick by a priest, and I was born right before St. Patrick's Day. And I really think that my mission is to, not to be a bishop like St. Patrick, but to go and spread somehow, like I'm supposed to be like St. Patrick in the United States and spread the gospel through my writing. And I think if everyone looks at their life, maybe there's a saint that's born on the day or the name they have, they will see there's a divine connection between your mission and your birthday and your baptismal name.
Oh, I do like
Yeah, and
that.
I think we recently uh, were on a program at home with
Jim and Joy.
Jim and
So
Joy
fun.
on EWTN, and we went to church and Our Lady of the Sorrows
Oh, yeah. That was powerful.
in Birmingham,
It's
Alabama,
worth a trip.
and the priest there, he made a point. And sometimes there's things that, we know in the back of our heads that we just haven't really thought about it in a really clear way. And in his homily, he pointed out the fact that what is our mission?
Mhm.
Our mission is to help each other get to heaven. Every person we meet, Jesus wants in heaven. And so if we think of every person, as a potential person that Jesus wants us to interact with in a way that will help them get to heaven. That's awesome if you really think about it.
Mhm.
Oh, that's beautiful. I agree with you.
Yeah, he was that church is also a beautiful place to just go. And if you do,
Mhm.
I do the stained glass windows where you stand in front of each stained glass window and just
Huge
look at
stained
it.
glass.
And they were so, we didn't get to do it because we were only there for that one day, but they were so colorful and large. It was good. You know, we as Christians, Catholics, we are, they always make fun like we do aerobics in mass. We sit, stand, kneel, but really it's our senses are alive in our
Mhm.
sight, in our smell, in our everything about it. And then we do the kiss of peace. We touch, hello, I mean, God bless you. Peace be with you and with your spirit. It's very important that the stained glass windows are in the church because we had churches without them. We're like, where are the stained glass? And the saints, these are visuals, and the children come alive when you teach them about that. So Patrick, you can continue in case we got you off the path, but I want to hear about the humility book. The
Right.
humility of saints.
Yeah,
How'd
so
that come out? Because
yeah,
that
so
is a hard, they say everything begins with humility after like prayer and humility.
Well, yeah, and as you share, one of the thoughts, because we were talking, because we read about the saints
We
every
do
day,
with
one of the
Belinda's book.
saints, and um, some of the saints in terms of, especially ones who are cloistered or in monasteries or whatever, would talk about, go ahead, humiliate me,
Oh,
um,
send this
think
something
less
on.
of me. But in the world, there's a challenge in terms of we who are not in those situations, and in your case is, okay, why would anybody listen to us?
Mhm.
So there's a way in which you don't want people to
Oh, I
ignore
see.
you
Don't be so
totally and
humble.
demean you. It's at the same time because they won't even bother to even look at what you may be offering in terms of your mission or whatever. So that's a real challenge, to be humble
But
and
then
still,
speak out.
yes, still be a witness, right?
yeah,
Into it's to be evangelist in terms of word and deed. So it's a
yeah,
real challenge.
yeah. No, I think there's two camps with humility. You have people that, again, they bury their gifts because they think, they don't want to be prideful. So I'm just gonna, like, God's given me this talent. I'm just gonna bury that treasure. And
Mhm.
then there's other people, the other spectrum is like, you let everyone in the world know about everything, the prideful person. So I think
I get you.
yeah, humility is truth. And we want to, again, it's basically glory, humility, is seeing ourselves as God sees us and giving glory back to God. And, that's why I say, like, Our Lady, that's why I put these saints in here, because her Magnificat, I say that's like the first litany of humility. And I don't know if you guys have ever, I'm trying to find my prayer card, but the litany of humility is like, so in my book, what I do is I take each line of the litany of humility here,
Very
and
Mhm.
then
nice.
and that's what each chapter is. And then you have three or
All
four
right.
different saints and how they lived out that specific line. And then I also include the litany of humility in the back of the book. But it is the most challenging litany to pray because it says, from the desire of being praised, deliver me, O Jesus. And
Mhm.
but I think we need to get to the point is, like, humility isn't being a doormat, right? It's not saying like, hey, I mean, although it comes to this point where, like, Our Lady even says, I quoted her in my book, she told Saint Bridget, the reason why God exalted me is because I believed I was nothing. Like, I believed everything was from God. And again, it's not this, I'm nothing, I'm horrible, I'm bad. No, it's like God is great. And so I think it's a sense of, yeah, just again, the truth about ourselves. And the more that we become humble, the more we forget about ourselves. We're constantly, we're not talking about ourselves all the time. We see, so I think that's kind of one of the starting points. And
Right.
obviously the greatest person of humility is Jesus in the Eucharist. And
That's
and
right.
that's why I put in the book, this is Saint Norbert, and he's kneeling before Jesus. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes.
I wrote a book with Father Calloway called 30-Day Eucharistic Revival. He's the main author, but
Fun. We
he,
like him too. We
yeah,
like us. Maybe
yeah,
we like 30
yeah,
Day Christian Revival. Did we read that one?
Yes.
Oh, we did. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
I didn't know
yeah,
you
and
noticed it.
yeah,
See,
and,
it's so
and
long. Yes.
but St. Peter Julian Amar talks about that Jesus in the Eucharist becomes so humble, lower than man, because he's a thing, he's a appearance of bread and wine. And so when we receive Jesus in the Eucharist, and also just spending time with him. That's how we acquire this great virtue of humility.
Yes,
Right.
yes. I think it just to pick up on what you said, I think it's like this. We have to come to the point we think we're nothing. We are nothing, Lord. If we didn't have but God,
Yeah.
we are nothing. And then after God shows you, look at you, this is you, this is the flesh. And then you learn that, but nothing's impossible with God. Then you don't go around anymore going, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. No, you go, I have a huge God that helps me out throughout my entire life. It comes to a round circle.
Yeah, and we're excited about the fact that he is so merciful and loving, right? So, but it is a challenge, I think, because it's so easy for each of us as human beings to slip into pride. It's a constant
That's right.
challenge. It's something we have to work against
And
our
we-
whole lives. And even the saints who did that, they worked at it.
That's true. And then to
Yeah.
know what it is clarity, right? Because I told this one person, you and your husband are so humble. And then they were like, yes, we are. And I just laughed out loud because you see what I'm saying? But they knew they knew that was one of the virtues they had acquired, and it was right. And I just laughed because people get upset with people that go like, oh, I can't draw. Oh, I can't draw. I can't sing. They go, oh, you're just so down on yourself. No, really. I can't. You want to hear me sing? You have to be able to have that balance. People are deceived, I think. They don't have the wisdom of the saints.
And I think one of the misunderstandings we see in terms of non-Catholics and Christians is the fact that they think we elevate Mother Mary above Jesus. And no, we always say Mary always pointed to her son.
Yeah.
Do what her son wants. That she's always pointing to her son, who is then always, and Jesus is always pointing to the Father in terms of his humility.
Well, yeah, we have to acquire. And don't you think, Patrick, with having a wife and Pat and I have each other, right? And that you really, if you read together, we read every day, every morning together, and we pray together, and then we start working on, like right now, we're working on Thinking the Best from that book. It's an old book, and it's about marriage. And so then we kind of rub off through our edges in a nice way instead of going like, you, man, we rub off.
No, it's you.
It's me. But we do rub off, and we really do try to be kind. And then we grow in virtue that way. You really can't read a book and draw in every virtue. We have when we read every day, Spiritual Diary, and it's about the virtues. It takes one virtue a month in the saints. It's a great book. It's a classic to me. But you can't just go like, man, I'm not doing anything right. Then that just destroys the whole confidence in Christ. But God, you can do all things Christ strength. So we do work on things together because we live together, and you can hide anything from people out there in the world. It's like they have no idea. And then you got to be like willing as a couple to say, please rub off the rush edges on me, but don't. What did Joy say on the show? Remember, she said, I kept saying that. What'd she say? Do you remember? She said she has a certain thing about rubbing off the rough edges. And we said one way.
Like sandpaper.
So you have to be willing to do it kindly, guys. If you men are more of a critic, or if you women are more of a critic, but lead with kindness. That helps.
Right.
So Patrick, you also give talks? Is that right?
Yeah, I've given some talks. I have this conference in September. I'll be speaking in California, but I've given talks on the parents of the saints. I talk about also a talk on miscarriage. I've given a talk on the Holy Eucharist, and Our Lady of Sorrows. I have a children's book on her. So I don't speak this past year I haven't been invited a whole lot, but I'm happy to come to any of your parishes. And then I also try to, with my ministry that I help with, that Catholic nonprofit, we have some incredible speakers like Devin Shad, and then Keith Nestor and Jim O'Day. They speak at all these men's conferences. So I'm trying to work on getting them to speak at different places.
Yeah, I think the ministry too of your nonprofit. You want to mention that name again?
Yeah, tell them.
Yeah. So I work for them. It's called Stewardship, a Mission of Faith. And it was founded by a very holy man named David Abel. He just just one of the most prayerful men I know. And his spiritual director is Monsignor Esif, who was Mother Teresa's spiritual director. And Monsignor Esif is getting up in age, but supposedly he has the gift of reading souls. When you go to confession to him, he can read your soul. He's a son of Padre Pio. I always wanted that. I always wanted to go to
Padre Pio, yeah.
I wanted a priest and that's what, again, humility. like when we go to confession, we don't often confess the sin of pride, but I think that, that's we have to do that. And we have to see ourselves again as God sees us and as his beloved sons and daughters. That's the primary thing because if we don't have that foundation, his love, we need charity and then humility because they go together. And that's what the scribes and the Pharisees, they lacked humility and charity. And so that's when it all comes down to the secret to, you'll probably say, to a great marriage is obviously love, but it's also humility because if your wife is criticizing you or vice versa, and you just, like if you can't take it or, just humbly accept that advice or the criticism from your own children. I think I've even apologized to my own son and my daughter. I do it frequently. I wouldn't say frequently, but I do. When I make a mistake, I say, I'm sorry for hurting you. And I think as we need to do that as parents, just because we're older than them, and so just really this humility, it needs to be the foundation of everything.
Right. Yeah, and I think one of the things we did is to um, teach our children to actually say, "Please forgive me,"
Yeah.
in the other child,
To
because
how to
sibling rivalry and all that is a common problem and issue. So,
Yes, H, but still.
and make them do it, or if they did something wrong that we needed to be involved with, and we would always approach it in terms of asking forgiveness and then giving them a hug and saying, we love you, as part of that, which is pretty much what happens in confession, in terms of
Mhm.
God loves you, and wants to uh, continue giving his mercy upon you and your soul. So, uh, and you mentioned earlier, one of that part of your ministry is this pornography, which is, I think a
Mhm.
lot of people just don't fully understand
That's good.
how bad a problem this is, that even amongst clergy, it's a significant problem. And
Yeah.
I remember very early on being involved in the internet, and we certainly were diligent as we could be in terms of our children
Mhm.
getting on the internet because
Please.
early on it was just everywhere and rampant. You
Yeah.
could just click on the most innocent thing. In fact, one of our children did, but I was able to track it to see it was an innocent click on something that seemed very innocent that
Yeah.
led to it's gotten much better. So you have to really go after it. But it's a real problem amongst men, and the way I understand it, it's becoming an ever increasing problem even amongst women. But you see in our over sexualized society where, of course, that's going to become a problem. And so
Yeah.
it's
And
good that you're involved with that.
So
Are you writing any books about that?
I am actually doing, I kind of, until the pre-order page is up, I usually keep my ideas more on the confidential, but I'm working on a book in that for my company, Stewardship, with another Jim O'Day, who's Integrity Restored. So I'll have to let you know when that book, comes out. But, I think yeah, we need more to foster purity. And the thing that we offer is it's called Three Pillars to Purity Program. And it's a training, it's a 15-hour program that priests and seminarians they can watch. And it's like $250 per priest, but we don't let money stand in the way. But typically we reach out to a diocese and we'll say, hey, we have this program. And there is priests that are struggling with this. So it helps them, but also the final product is once they're whole, like they'll be able to, when they have someone come into confession, because I wrote an article for a Catholic Exchange called Three Hail Marys Won't Work. And basically saying that if you have an addiction, and you come to confession and
I
someone says, here's three Hail Marys, like you're just gonna fight that. Like you need accountability. You need sometimes often you need to meet with a Catholic psychologist. And
Mhm.
so it
right.
really is, just this, and I think I was saying to my wife, like I didn't have an iPhone growing up, it gives you my age, right? You know,
We're trying to guess.
I
Yeah,
know.
I'm children.
Yeah, and if I had an iPhone in high school, it would have been over. I mean, not only for addiction, but I would have been able to focus. And so I just think right now, like the attacks on, it's like you hand your kid an iPhone, you're handing them like a loaded gun, basically,
Yeah,
especially.
So
absolutely.
sad.
Yeah.
A lot of our kids didn't have that, did they? I don't know. We had a lot
No,
of, we
because
have a 50-year-old
most of our
down.
kids
So
were before iPhones. So
Yeah,
and so it is so hard for parents these days. It's always been difficult,
yeah,
but it seems like it's become even more difficult with
yeah,
the internet and the phones and the media and
it was used to
and
just read
trying to keep
magazines.
people, trying to keep kids off it because then they go to friends or
yeah,
they can if they have any money, they go and buy their own phones and, keep it secret. And so it's, you have to be just diligent and praying it up. We used to pray that our kids, if you sin, we're praying you get caught. And we told them that. We said, we're praying you get caught.
And we were
That's
in
good.
community.
And
so
most of the
people
time they did.
People
So,
were all over the town, our community was pretty small, but it was like 500 people or more. And they'd see our kids and then they'd come back to us because we had prayed that. And it was very helpful. Not that our kids did anything wrong, but they may have done a few things. And we got the note and Pat would always confront them. Some of our children were honest to a fault and get mad that we got caught. The others would just make up a story that Pat knew wasn't
yeah,
true.
and as you raise your
Nowadays.
kids and those who are listening, in terms of one of the things that is that we did is at the dinner table, we would bring the
That's right. We
faith
like
to
this.
bear on
Heard of
the
that.
issues of the day. Whatever was in the news, we would try to bring, well, here's Catholics, here's how we ought to think about that and approach that. And so parents should, and as you're raising your kids, you want to think about that in terms of, okay, well, because
Do they bring it down
there are
to-
issues like you can talk about the catechism, but how does that apply to some of the modern day issues?
Mhm. And then the other thing is we really did have an open table, open home. So everyone's invited and they to this day, because we live in the same town we did when the kids were being raised, they wanted to be at Pat's table to hear him. That's God called me a deacon because he had such knowledge and such a demeanor with the children to bring them over.
Actually, I think they were there because my wife was a good cook.
Yeah, we don't cook anymore though. My mom was, you don't cook? But we did cook for like 15 or 20 people a night because it would be our house, the gathering house. We had real food.
Yeah.
Also that we guarded their friendships. So I think the saints, I know that in these days, I keep bringing up the same book because it's only half here. I'm going to get some more books, but this is what they did. They were mostly family, wasn't it, in the day? And this is our generation, but because a lot of the saints were older, like Carlos. I love the new saint, Carlos.
Gorgeous.
I got to write on him, see the documentary and read him. He actually led his mom to Christ, which I thought was phenomenal because I led my mom more to Christ through Patrick and her living with us because she was 97 and died. And she was every day, she liked to go to church to sit with her New York Italian friends in the back of the church. And she didn't know anything about Jesus. But when she came here, we had her for a captive audience for 2.5 years. We taught her everything in a real short amount of time. So, it's never too late. It's never too early to learn more about Jesus. It's a never ending learning. So I'm going to let Patrick and Pat sum up this show and what they want to say. And then if you want to go first, he could tell us more about his. Oh, you want to go first, Patrick? Then tell us more about where you get your books,
Patrick,
how to get a hold of you. And we did enjoy this. And next we want to your wife will come on. We tried to get his wife on one time, but she was pregnant. I think.
Yeah. What key points would you like to leave with people?
Yeah. I think that I guess, did you want me to just show you? I was just going to show you
Yes, I do want to show
quick. I could just show you real quick, and then on these books, and then so this one, The Humility of the Saints, and then
newest one, Soviet Press,
and then this one's with Ascension Kids. If you have, it's a board book, so it's like you have opposites basically. This is with Ascension Kids, so I like you have the tall saint, the short one. It's kind of rhyming.
So
it's kind of a cute, just showing how unique you are, and I'll tie in, and then I have the most powerful saints and exorcisms with Sophia, like which saints are showing up in exorcisms. And I have more of these. I'm not going to go through every single one. The truth about hell.
No, we like them all.
And I think, and those ones are on my website is patrickrohern.com. And then
don't forget the hour because I do.
Yeah. And then the other one is I have to look at my company website. I think it's a stewardship. Let me see. I think it's just stewardship, a mission of faith.
Right. Correct. That's correct.
Yeah. On that website. And then I think, let me just, it's on stewardshipmission.org for, if anyone wants. And we have a lot of products on there. We have,
good.
So like just some really good Catholic resources. And then I think, the message that I want to leave with people, I think is, I love writing on the saints. And I think, and I have a book, one more thing coming out in the future on with Father Cow. It's a children's book on Our Lady of Knock, and that'll come out. That'll be on my website. And what I found is just to having a relationship. We have a lot of these fake friends on Facebook. They're not really cultivated, and sometimes even myself, like I don't have a lot of friends. It's not because I don't want to. It's just I kind of, when you go through suffering and certain trials in life, you kind of see who your true friends are, and you
Absolutely.
also,
Ah,
and for the sake of time too, it's like not all of us can go and have, 100 friends, and but I think the thing is we need to have our closest friendships, outside of our spouse. And it's good to have, at least a couple good friendships, but having the saints too, like just they need to be a part of our life, and I think that's
right.
my takeaway is, and they can grow like this book too, this children's book. One of the things is pray with Father Calloway. It's called The Virtues of the Saints. And but praying for the virtues, I think that's really important. Asking Our Lady, when humility, like often we're afraid to ask for humility because we think, oh, God's just going to strike us down and humble us. We will be humbled, but like He's a good Father. And I think to ask, especially at Holy Communion, ask for Our Lady, give me your humility. And then if we're lacking a certain virtue, like, maybe we're afraid all the time, for fortitude, ask Saint Joan of Arc, you know. So I think these saints and angels, like especially our guardian angel, they're really important. And that my takeaway is just to really, call upon them and call upon your children's guardian angels. They're part of our family.
So good. And last time he was on, we had it and tell his testimony. I had him tell. So go on and go tell the world and Wow Mom and see the different people that we've had on. I have 20 co-hosts now. So anytime we want to be on, please come on the show, ask us, because it's how we forget people. We have a busy, our life is very full. Rich, I call it crazy busy, but in a good way. And Deacon Pat, what do you want to say to close this show before I close it out? What do you think the takeoff is?
Well, I think, yeah, humility is something you have to work at, and pray for. And one of the things I do that helps me is every time I receive Jesus, kneeling afterwards, I say, thank you for your mercy, Lord, because I'm a sinner. And
Mhm.
so just remember, we're all sinners, and don't be discouraged. But be encouraged to keep trying, because Jesus knows that we are not going to be like Jesus, but He wants us to be like Jesus, and we have to continue to work at it, but we will never be perfect. And that's the challenge, is not to get discouraged, but to keep trying.
That's right. And I want to close with saying Patrick is a great author, and you just check out his website, his books, and the thing is, use your gifts. He mentioned that he didn't have the gift; God gave him the gift, and that is very impressive. But when you have the gift, you don't want to bury it under a bushel basket, because you want to let the world shine and see the gift. It's a gift for God gives you to pour out to others. It's not a gift to keep to yourself and hide. So I do appreciate the show. Anytime I'll be on the show again, come on. And I just want to say from Ellen and Pat, hosts of Go Tell the World, and Patrick, our guest, we say, see,
Traveling along,
oh, we're so, the other way.
song,
Side
side
by
by
side.
side.
That's all the show
Bless
began here, but it's
you.
good. Yeah, God bless you, and check
Oh,
it out.
thank you so much. God bless you both.
It was good. Thank you, Patrick.